Testing. All right, I got my regular costume on, I guess. I don't know if you would have been able to take me seriously if I had been wearing my super Spencer costume. But I went ahead and took it off, and I had another shirt on, the Jesus shirt, and it looks really cool. If you haven't got one yet, there's still some back there. But it was, believe it or not, that silk suit is really, really hot, and that I just need to wear something different now. So here we go. The birth of Samson, we're going to start with in Judges chapter 13. We're just going to do a straightforward Bible study to begin this first half together. We'll cruise through Judges 13 through chapter 16. We'll kind of break down the text. We'll just look at different verses that go along with it, try to bring the text to life. And then the last part of our time together, I'll maybe even open it up to see if anybody has maybe lessons that you think you can pull from Samson's life. If nobody talks, I have 5 lessons ready to go of what I was able to draw out from these chapters. But even reading it again and again a number of times to prep for tonight's Bible study about Samson, I had a hard time pulling out a lot of positive attributes and positive things. Even Landon, that's the oldest one, he's 8 years old, and he's like, Daddy, Samson's not really a good guy in the Bible. I go, well, true, and he made a lot of bad choices. God was with him. God did use him. He did use him to defeat the Philistines, to accomplish his will. No doubt the Spirit of God rushes upon Samson a number of times. And even in the Hall of Faith chapter, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 32, there's a list of a couple of the judges, and guess who makes the cut? Samson. So overall, we know he makes the cut in the Hall of Faith. But when we read his life, which we're going to do, if you haven't read Judges 13 through 16 in a while, that's what we're going to do today, you'll see that, wow, it's hard to pull out a lot of really positive lessons. But even sometimes from people's mistakes, we can learn lessons. And so we'll be able to come up with a number of just conclusions and observations and applications from this text. So the birth of Samson. Samson literally means son, child. And it says in verse number 1, and the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And if you've ever looked at my Bible, I tend to highlight just important words or phrases that I think stick out. And I just highlighted the word again. And when you're reading the book of Judges, it's a cycle of things are going good, things aren't going so good. I think about chapter 2 in verse number 11, Judges 2, verse 11. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. And then in chapter 13, and the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And it's a fairly close period of time. A lot of similar things will be taking place. Even with the Philistines, they're going to have numerous encounters with the Philistines. I think the first one, what was it, in chapter 4? We read one encounter with the Philistines with Shamgar, he's one of the judges who gets one verse. But this guy could, have a really neat action movie about Shamgar. It says in Judges 3, verse 31, after him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 of the Philistines with an ox goad, and he also saved Israel. I had to Google again what an ox goad looked like, and it's just that's an amazing feat that this judge was able to take down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. Now, kind of spoiler alert, if you haven't read Judges, I know it's a couple thousand years old, but he's going to kill, I think, 1,000 Philistines with he's like, an ox goad, watch this, a donkey's jawbone he's going to use, and it's just crazy. But they're going to have numerous encounters with the Philistines, chapter 3, chapter 13, later on in the book of Judges, and Samuel and Chronicles. It's just a reoccurring issue. David and Goliath yesterday, we talked about. And so they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. So God's not prone to just allowing disobedience and turning your back on him and letting you kind of get away with it. There's punishment. There's discipline. And you're going to see this even in Samson's life later on. But the children of Israel are going to be given into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years before Samson is going to come on the scene to deliver them for at least 20 years that we'll read about here in a little bit. If I ever get out of verse 1, you're thinking, wow, how long is he going to talk today? Well, we will get through with plenty of time before you get a cookie and juice, but let's keep, now we're in verse 2. Here we go. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. I can't help but to think about our study in Numbers and Deuteronomy, and I've been also looking a little bit at the book of Joshua too, and it was this, you look at years before this scene is taking place, and you read of this area called Zorah that the Danites inherit. And when I was looking at my little chain references, like, oh yeah, that's the land area where the tribe of Dan got. And then fast forward a few years, you got Manoah, who's from there. Now his wife was barren and had no children. And of course, I wrote down a few people in Scripture that really stuck out to me, like you can sense some similarities. The first one was, the most recent history would be Hannah, and in the book of 1 Samuel, or also 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 2, and then Elizabeth. See, Elizabeth is the one that really sticks out to me in the book of Luke. Luke chapter 1. There's going to be a number of comparisons between John the Baptist and Samson. And the more I was studying, I was kind of looking at the similar accounts of their birth. And like later on with this Nazirite vow, and they both have, a lot of similarities between the two. But you have this discussion, you have the wife is barren and has no children. And then verse number 3, the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink or eat nothing unclean. And if you're hearing this for the first time, if you are Manoah's wife and you're like, why would I not do that? And of course, I mean, even from a wisdom point of view and a practical point of view, in modern days, you would go to even in the men's bathrooms, it says, if you were expecting a baby, I'm like, I don't think so, but don't drink any, alcoholic beverages. But here, the difference is here, it's about this Nazirite vow that's about to be from birth that Samson's going to need to follow. It says in verse number 5, and for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God. It means to be separate to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. So this is his purpose. This is his mission later on. This is going to be the mission of Samson. And I can't help again, if you want to study Numbers chapter 6, you get a more fuller account of the Nazirite vow. But in verse number 6, the woman came and told her husband, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. I like that word there. Full of awe. Awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. Now, Manoah is going to later on try to get to understand what his name is. But in verse 7, he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, oh Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with this child who is to be born. Well, God's going to answer this prayer pretty much immediately. It says, and God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she was sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman, you think about what she's going to do here, she runs quickly and tells her husband, verse number 10, behold, the man who came to me the other day, he's appeared to me. And Manoah arose and he went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, are you the man who spoke to this woman? I mean, I guess that was one way to talk to your wife back then, I guess. And he said, I am. And Manoah said, now when your words come true, what is to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission? And I highlight it in my Bible here, his mission. What's my child's mission? And you think about different directions when we start talking about application about that. What's Samson's mission going to be? And then you can compare it to Luke. Remember how I keep going, kind of comparing a little bit with John the Baptist in Luke 1, verse 66. Here's something that was said. And all who heard them laid them up in their hearts, saying, what then will this child be, John the Baptist? for the hand of the Lord was with him. What will this child be? Now with Samson, what's this child's manner of life, and what is his mission going to be? In verse number 13, the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, of all that I have said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink or anything of an unclean thing, all that I commanded her to observe. I mean, Samson literally from the womb on is supposed to have this Nazirite vow. Even in Numbers chapter 6, if you read it in a fuller context, they're not even supposed to go in near the vineyards. I mean, they're supposed to even stay out of it. Don't even mess with the appearance of something that could tempt them. Excuse me. Here we go. And in verse number 15, Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, please let us detain you. I guess that's one way to talk to somebody. And prepare a young goat for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, if you detain me, I will not eat of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. He's about to find out. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, what is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? What is your name? It's always fascinating. They want to know what the angel or the messenger's name is. And this response is going to be really similar to the response that Jacob receives in Genesis 32 when he wrestles with the angel of the Lord, and where he gets his name God, or not God, Israel, where Jacob's name's changed to Israel, for he wrestled with the Lord. It says, the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you ask my name? Seeing that it is wonderful. Seeing that it's wonderful. Why do you ask my name? It's the same answer that an angel of the Lord's given before. It's even the same thing with Jesus, how he answered the question about, he said, why do you call me good when only God is good? See that only his name is good. Or his name, it says here, seeing it is wonderful. I would write down, if you're taking notes, Isaiah 9 verse 6. Isaiah 9 verse 6, one of the Lord's names or description terms for him is wonderful. Seeing it is wonderful. Verse 19, so Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders, to God. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And this is very similar to Judges chapter 6. If you've read Judges recently with Gideon, you got a similar setup taking place. And then just imagine your reaction. Kind of put yourself in history, a couple thousand years back, and then you're watching. And then you have Manoah and his wife who are watching this take place. And in verse 20, and a flame went up toward heaven from the altar, and the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. I think my response would be very similar to that if you were able to witness something supernatural like that. I would write down, if you're writing notes, like Leviticus 9:24, when they're learning how to do these type of offerings, and then all of a sudden you see this flame thing go up, and their reaction is they all fell on their faces on the ground. Same reaction. Verse 21, the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And there's no doubt that they're believers, they're people that he was, they took this very seriously. They were scared here in a sense. Manoah was, at least. And verse 22, Manoah said to his wife, we shall surely die, for we have seen God. But his wife said to him, if the Lord has meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands, or shown us all these things, or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and named him Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in, however you want to pronounce that, Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol, okay? So this isn't the first time you have the Spirit of the Lord rushing upon, stirring somebody. There is another person so far in the book of Judges, chapter 3, verse 10. Othniel had the Spirit of the Lord come upon him. And this is going to happen. This is going to happen a couple times within Samson's life that we're going to read. He came upon him before he did something incredible. All right, so you're wondering if you're ever going to get to talk about where Samson's actually born, and now we are. And it kind of he's born, and then it goes, quickly fast forwards to him being older. Here we go, verse 1 of chapter 14. Samson went down to Timnah. Timnah's been a city since like Genesis, if you ever look at the history of that. And at Timnah, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Without reading any more of this, and after reading like the law of Moses, especially a lot for this past quarter, we've been studying that here at Keller. It's like, I'm thinking, no, don't do that, Samson. This is not going to be good. I don't even have to read what's going to happen next. I just know this is not going to end up good, okay? The daughters of the Philistines, you're not supposed to do that. Stay within your people here. Okay, here we go, verse number 2. And then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah, and now get her for me as my wife. It's like me in high school there. When I didn't work like that. It's not part of our culture. That's not how it works. We don't. We might ask for permission from somebody that you're attracted to, especially when you're younger, I guess. Ask for the permission of the parents, or to ask your parents their input. But in ancient Near Eastern culture, not even just the Israelites. This was kind of common amongst all those civilizations during that time. I would compare this to Genesis 34 in verse 4, where you have Shechem, who's not an Israel, he's not a Hebrew, and he is attracted to one of the Hebrews, and he says to his parents, "Go get her as my wife." Who was it, Dinah in that scene? And so this is just common. Get the young goat, make the proposal, and you get their parents involved in this process. In verse number 3, but his father and his mother said to him, and this is pretty good a response. Samson probably should have taken heed to this. Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all your people that you must go to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes, meaning she's attractive to me. Okay? His father and his mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines at the time that the Philistines ruled over Israel. So that verse alone, verse number 4, I mean, that makes my wheels spin a little bit in my mind. What does that even mean? I take this from a number of different angles. Was this like, I started to think that Samson, was he doing this on purpose, not really telling his parents, oh, really, I'm going to kind of woo her, I guess, and then I'll be kind of get my foot in the door with the Philistines and I can take them down. I don't think this is really his plan. I think he's attracted to her. I mean, it says that she was right in his eyes. And the father and mother are trying to discourage him from doing this, saying, what are you thinking? Could it be the Lord using this scene that's taking place and using Samson's free will to ultimately have Samson take down a good number of the Philistines? But obviously, we know God's working behind the scenes. And that's a crazy thing about providence. We don't always understand it. We can't always put our finger and say, yep, God did that, God orchestrated this. But we know the promise and the truth that God is working behind the scenes. And sometimes we can't really identify it, even sometimes until years later. Like even us now, we're like 3,000 plus years later, we're looking back on Judges saying, oh, I see how that's working. Samson, by his own free will, is attracted to this person, and he's going to get into this relationship, but it's not going to go good. Spoiler alert again. And now he's going to take down the Philistines, who are, if you keep big picture context, is not a good group of people. The Philistines are they're going to burn somebody, a wife and a father, in a minute. I mean, they're just not good people. There were child sacrifices. They worship Dagon. Sometimes when we read judgments that take place in the Bible, we're like, oh man, poor Philistines. It's like, if you could just maybe read a little bit about what they did, you would understand, well, after these number of years, God's now has judgment being pronounced on them, and he's using Samson as a means to fulfill that. So you get how my wheels are spinning when I read verse 4 alone. I'm like, wow. And so let's just read verse 5. Then Samson went down with his father and his mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. Okay? So this is a very similar, no, I don't have the same response, because verse 6 says, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. And I assume that's fairly easy. I don't know. I haven't done that either, but it looks easy. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. That's an important phrase there, because they're not going to know that when he gives them the honey in him, and it's coming from a dead carcass, which if you're a Nazarite, has a vow, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're not supposed to be touching anything unclean. Stay away from things that are unclean or things that will make you unclean. So the parents aren't going to know about it. Okay, so verse number 8. And let's see. And after some days, no, I'm kind of skipping ahead. It's going to be verse number 7. And then he went down and talked with the woman, for she was right in Samson's eyes. After some days he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. And of course, Samson, realizing he's been committed to this Nazirite vow, walked on ahead without touching it. That's not what it says. It actually says something totally different. Verse number 9, he scraped it out into his hands and went on, eating as he went. And he came to his father and his mother and gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of a lion. And he went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, and so the young men used to do. Again, custom. This is just a custom that we just probably don't understand. A 7-day feast. And you got at least 30 young men that are going to be at this feast. Oh, verse 11. As soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And I can only... Sometimes when I read what he does and the way he responds, especially with Delilah later, I'm like, what is going on in Samson's mind? It's like he plays games with people, and he just wants to demonstrate his, maybe he's more wise in his own eyes than he really is. He's about to propose a pretty tough riddle, if you haven't heard it before. But later on, even with Delilah, it's like he's playing a game to demonstrate how strong he is and kind of leading someone on. And I have a hard time putting myself into Samson's shoes. Like, what's he doing here? Like, why? Why even do verse 12? Samson said to them, let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes, which is equivalent to a lot. It's something that's very important. It's enough where they're going to say later on, is this man going to impoverish us? In one of the verses in a moment. Okay, verse number 13. But if you cannot tell me what it is, you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, put your riddle that we may hear it. Oh, yeah, 7 days, easy. We got this. And he said to them, and if you've never heard this, maybe don't read ahead and see if you can figure it out. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. Okay? And in 3 days, they could not solve the riddle. So 7 minus 3, they got 4 more days to figure it out. And they can't figure it out. So on the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is. And she probably said something like, or what? And they said, or we will burn you and your father's house with fire. That doesn't sound very fun. And have you invited us here to impoverish us? And so you get this, you get different motivations. So this woman, her motivation to try to get this information from Samson is, I don't really want to get burned, and I don't want my father to burn, and I don't want my family to burn. And then later on in chapter 16, Delilah's motivation is going to be verse 5, chapter 16, verse 5. And the lords of the Philistines came to her and said, seduce him and see what great strength lies, and by what means we may overcome him, and that we may bind him and to humble him, and then we will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So her motivation is money. And she's going to comply. And with this woman in chapter 14, it's like, I better get this information or I'm going to possibly die. Maybe she isn't, doesn't maybe understand that Samson has the ability to deliver her and all that stuff. And also, I can't help but to think if she's sympathetic to the Philistines. That's something that's been rolling over in my mind as I even look at Delilah later on. Like, we don't know for sure if Delilah is a Philistine later on. All the context clues say yes. But this one, she's one of the daughters of the Philistines, verse 1. So I wonder if she's sympathetic to her. Wow, I know these 30 young men. I've known them for a long time. And now we're going to impoverish them. And do I really want to see this happen to them? I'm not even completely, I can't, even this whole... when are they officially married and not married? When are they husband and wife? Those terms are being used already. But this person, I don't even know too well. He just thought I was right in his eyes and said he wanted get his parents to bring the goat and all that stuff. Okay, And so let's keep moving on in verse number 16. And Samson's wife wept over him and said, "You only hate me. You do not love me. But you have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is." And he said to her, "Behold, I have not told my father nor my mother. Why should I tell you?" She wept before him for 7 days, that their feast lasted. And on the 7th day he told her, because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. I wonder if Samson is going to realize that it was her who told the Philistines. You know, I wonder if he's going to realize the correlation, the coincidence, that here at the very last moment, kind of a buzzer shot going in, and the answer is this, the answer, right at the last second. Well, I don't believe Samson is dumb. I think he knows because of this quote he's going to say here in a moment. Here we go. And so the men of the city, verse 18, said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, here's the answer: what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? So the riddle is, out of the eater came something to eat. The answer is, what is, kind of a Jeopardy version here, what is sweeter than honey? And then out of the strong came something sweet. The answer, what is stronger than a lion? Okay? And he responds to them. I would never say this about any woman, but he says this about his wife. If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. So he says something to her and to them about her. He knows. He knows what happened, and he's not happy. I mean, verse 19, it says, in hot anger, he is not happy with what happened. In verse 19, the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and he struck down 30 men of the town, and took their spoil, and gave the garments of those who had told the riddle, and in hot anger, he went back to his father's house. I mean, this is bad, because of somebody's mistake, a lot of people are going to be facing the punish. 30 people lose their life as a result. Okay, in verse number 20, and Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his best man. So I don't even know what to say about that. I just wrote on the side of my Bible, messy. This is just too much soap opera stuff going on for me. Okay, and to his best man, because to be honest, Samson's not super thrilled about this. I mean, you think he's mad. He's not happy with the situation. He really isn't. And some things have taken place. God's used him, though, to be punishing some people. But verse 15, it says, after some days, I don't know exactly how long it was, but at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. And a young goat, if I'm understanding this right, if you looked at Genesis 38, verse 17, it has to do something with like a pledge, making a pledge. And so it's often connected with a marriage. So you're making a pledge with this young goat. It's like maybe he's trying to get things right or ask for forgiveness or try again or start over. Hey, I know you've done this once, but you know what? Here's a young goat. Let's start fresh again. And he said, I will go to my wife in the chamber. Okay, Samson's, the woman who is right in his eyes, he wants to go into the chamber with her, but her father would not allow him to go in. For her father said, I really thought you utterly hated her. I mean, and there's no doubt Samson was angry. So I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead. No comment. Verse number 3. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do harm. So here's what he does. So Samson went, he caught 300 foxes and took torches, and he turned them tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. This isn't good, by the way. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and set fire to the stacked grain and the standing grain as well as the olive orchard. So he's no doubt causing a big mess with the spoil. People's lives probably are going to be taken, and the Philistines are not going to be happy. Again, more and more people are going to be punished or face the consequences of somebody else's mistakes. So verse 6, and the Philistines said, who have done this? And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. And so who are the Philistines going to blame for this whole fox tied fire thing mess? I mean, it's bad. And they're like, well, who can we blame? Obviously, it's Samson. But why does Samson do it? Oh, yeah, because he's mad about this whole daughter of Timnah, giving wife to the companion, saying, you know what? We're going to go ahead, the end of the verse, and the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire, which Wasn't that kind of the initial threat, if you remember? That was the initial threat to begin with. Tell us, we will do this to you. Well, she does tell them Samson's riddle, and yet they still are killed as a result. I'm just telling you, this shows you how ruthless these people were. I mean, they just, we're going to burn her and her father now. This was a terrible thing, obviously, that took place. Verse 7, and Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit. Then he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow, and he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock of Etam. Then the Philistines came and encamped in Judah and made a raid on Lehi. I'm starting to think here, you're going to have the men of Judah, like 3,000 of them. Should they help Samson here and get him out of this mess, help him fight against the Philistines or not? You think about what you would do. All of a sudden, you're kind of taken off guard. In verse number 10, the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? And they said, we have come up to bind Samson and do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah, which I actually think is probably more than the Philistines based on verse 15, where 1,000 are going to be killed here in a little bit. But the 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock, Tom, if you want to say it like that, and said to Samson, why do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is it that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so have I done to them. And they said to him, we have come down to bind you. We may give you into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson said, well, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. They said to him, no, we will only bind you and give you into their hands, and we will surely not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. I don't think these ropes are going to hold him down. You'll see. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that were caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey and put his hand on it and took it, and he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, who knows if this would become like a quoted phrase in history, but it said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. I don't know if this is even a song. I'm sure it's a nice children's song. And with the jawbone of a donkey, have I struck down 1,000 men. Sometimes, like in my Bible, I have like things that are kind of spaced and indented, kind of if it's something poetic or something quotable or a song, something like that. Okay, in verse number 17, as soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand at the place that was now called, and the meaning of this new place is the hill of the jawbone. So if you're visiting that part of, this part of the world, and you're like, hey, why is this place called the hill of the jawbone? Well, let me tell you about a man named Samson who killed 1,000 Philistines here. This is where the name of this place came. In verse 18, he was very thirsty. So am I. And he came to the Lord and said, you have granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant, and shall I now die and thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? And God's with them, though. Think about it. And God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi. I mean, a miracle. And water came out of it, and then he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of the place is called, the name of the place means the spring of him who called. It is at Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. So Samson judges for 20 years. The Philistines, they had their 40 years. And now the Israelites are going to have a deliverer for 20 years. And we don't really read a lot what happens in these 20 years. I'm trying to, like I said, I've been trying to look at all the positive things in Samson's life. And God's with him. God's with him still, even with his flaws and even though he has an abundant amount of strength, at times even wisdom, maybe more than he can handle, God is still working through him. And I can't help but to wonder what kind of things he accomplished during those 20 years that we don't read about. Maybe enough things that got him put into Hebrews chapter 11, verse 32. But the bottom line, he judges for 20 years. Well, what else happened? Let's see what happens in the final chapter. Okay, the final chapter here. Is that clock right? Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute, and he went into her. So you see his moral compass seems to have changed. I mean, now, originally it was, hey, there's somebody who's right in my eyes. Mother, father, get the young goat. Let's make this happen. Now it's like, no, there's a harlot, and let's just go straight in. And the moral compass is not there anymore, it seems like. And the Gazites were told, Samson's come here. And they surrounded the place and set an ambush for him all night in the gate of the city. And they kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait until the light of the morning. Then we will kill him. But Samson lay till midnight. And at midnight he rose and took hold of the doors of the gate, no big deal, right, of the city, and the two posts, and he pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. I mean, this is, those 4 verses made the scriptures, been preserved. So we can read about this incredible strength of Samson to demonstrate it. But in verse 4, the most lengthy relationship we read about is, but after this he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name is Delilah. Now, nobody really knows today where that area is, and we don't read that she's even a Philistine. I think she likely is a Philistine, like I said, because of context, because the very next verse, and the lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her. So like they come and speak to her. And so the only reason why I think if we can point out the connection with the Philistines, it makes you wonder if this is why why she seems to be sympathetic to the Philistines as Samson continues to, take care of business. And it makes you wonder if she's a Philistine herself. Obviously, she's going to be tempted with money, but maybe she's connected to him nationality-wise. And so verse number 5, the Philistines said to her, seduce him and see where his great strength lies. And then it says, we'll give you 1,100 pieces of silver. And verse number 6, so Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where his great strength lies, that that he might be bound, and that one could subdue you. And then he goes on and gives her a number of supposed ways in which his strength will go. And it says, let's just read the first one. Samson, verse 7, said to her, if you bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. I can't help but to wonder if Samson's playing a game here. If he's like kind of leading her on, teasing her a little bit, not telling her the whole truth. Does he really believe this is what's going to make him just like an ordinary person be bound? And you'll see what happens. Verse number 8, then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she bound him to them. Now she had men lying in ambush in the inner chamber. And she said to them, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he snapped the bowstrings as a thread of flax snaps when it touches the fire, so the secret of his strength was not known. Okay, this is going to happen a couple different times. You'll have it with his hair is going to be tied up. There's going to be new ropes that are going to bind him. None of them are going to work. None of them are going to work. And again, I keep trying to put myself in the shoes of Samson. What is he doing here? I don't think he's dumb. I think he realizes, anytime I tell her to do something, she does that to me, and the Philistines coincidentally come to try to attack me. I don't think he's dumb. I think he almost thinks it's almost like a game. He has so much strength, and he just keeps going. Eventually he is going to give in. Eventually he's going to give in. Look where he gives in. Verse number 15. And she said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And I just wrote down extreme irritation. Just think about the most annoying things and pestering and sounds you've ever heard. I mean, soul would be vexed. So finally, he tells her, he says, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and be like any other man. Please leave me alone. You can only imagine if he said that at the end. Please. Okay? Well, Delilah knows that he finally told the truth. She tells the Philistines, hey, the Philistines are coming upon you, Samson. He tries to get out of it. His hair has been cut. He loses his strength. The Philistines actually are able to seize him. Verse 21, seize Samson. They gouge out his eyes. They bring him down to Gaza and bound him in bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison. Okay, we don't know how much time takes place. We know that his hair begins to grow back. Verse 22. You know that his hair begins to grow, obviously symbolic with the strength that's going to come upon him. Okay, we end the account here where the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god. Our God has given Samson into the enemy of our hand. And they said, hey, let's be entertained. Let's bring out Samson with his gouged eyes and all, and that he may entertain us. Verse number 25, very barbaric if you think about it. And then all of a sudden there's 3,000 men and women in verse 27 that are watching Samson. They're being entertained by Samson. And you see Samson, obviously a believer in God. He knows he's had this Nazirite vow since birth. But he says in verse number 28, Samson called to the Lord, using Yahweh, "O Lord God, please remember and please strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be..." He probably should have just stopped it right there. He probably should have said, "Oh God, be with me as I can, avenge these Philistines, these people who, all the things that they have done." But he kind of takes it to another personal level. And I underlined the words that I may be avenged in the Philistines for my 2 eyes. So it's like, yeah, I'm also, God, needing this strength because, hey, they did this to me and I want to get back to them. I want to avenge them. Okay, so you got a little bit of kind of a, thinking about himself. Okay, and then, so what happens here. Samson grasps, and I wish I could be in the kids' class because they got the pillars and all ready to go. And Samson, the ceiling's not going to cave in, don't worry. But in the kids' class, verse 30, and Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than those that he killed during his lifetime. And his family will come and they will bury him.